There are days when you wake up with a strange feeling. Nothing especially terrible has happened, and yet your heart feels heavy, as if you are carrying an invisible stone inside you. You still go to work, still answer messages, still smile when you need to smile, but deep down, something feels slightly out of alignment, and you begin to wonder why life sometimes feels light as a cloud, while at other times, one small thing is enough to shake your entire soul. Maybe the thing shaping the quality of your life is not only your outer circumstances, not only money, relationships, or the way other people treat you. Maybe it is also the field of energy you live with every day, the frequency your mind is sending out when you think, when you feel, when you sit alone in the depth of night. Because sometimes what exhausts a person is not that life is too heavy. It is that their inner world is vibrating at a level too low to lift them. You can call it presence. You can call it energy. You can call it inner vibration. The name is not the most important part. What matters is that you have already felt it for yourself. You walk into a room, and before anyone says a word, it already feels suffocating. You meet someone who does nothing extraordinary, and yet somehow your heart feels lighter around them. There are places that make you want to leave immediately. There are also certain eyes that with one glance alone make your soul soften. So perhaps life is not only moved by the things we can see, it is also moved by the invisible things silently flowing between human beings, between the heart and the world, between a hidden thought and the reality we are living inside. And if that is true, then the biggest question is no longer how life is treating you. The real question is this: what frequency are you living in, and what kind of life is that frequency calling in return? This is not a promise of easy miracles. It does not say that positive thinking alone will erase all suffering. It does not invite you to escape reality through beautiful, comforting words. What we are walking through here goes deeper than that. It is a journey back into yourself, so you can understand why some people go through storms and still remain bright, while others live in abundance and still feel dark inside. Why we may all live in the same world, yet each person seems to inhabit a very different reality. And maybe by the time you reach the end of this journey, you will realize something quiet, yet immense. Raising your frequency is not about becoming mystical. It is about becoming clearer. It is not about floating above the ground. It is about standing more firmly on it. It is not about denying darkness. It is about learning how to light a warmth inside yourself, so darkness no longer gets to control your life. Human beings tend to believe in what they can touch. A table is solid, a wall is still. A body seems to have clear and definite boundaries, but the deeper truth of the world is different. Beneath the appearance of stability that the eye can see, everything is moving. Everything is vibrating. From a speck of dust in the air to the heartbeat in your chest, from a passing thought in your mind to an emotion rising and settling in your heart. The stillness we often assume is the nature of things may simply be an illusion created by the senses. At a more subtle level, nothing is truly motionless. Everything has its own rhythm. A stone has the rhythm of stone. A tree has the rhythm of tree. A soul in love has the rhythm of love. A frightened heart has the rhythm of fear. And what matters is this: those invisible rhythms shape the way we experience the world and the way the world responds to us. There are days when you feel bright for no obvious reason. You walk outside and the sky seems more beautiful. You hear an old song and your heart softens. Someone says something ordinary and you still feel the kindness inside it. But there are also days when everything around you stays the same and only your inner frequency changes. Suddenly, the world in front of you seems to change color. Words sound sharper, eyes feel colder. One small task leaves you drained. This does not mean the world is a creation of imagination alone. It means your experience of the world always passes through an inner filter. When you are chaotic inside, the world appears threatening. When you are peaceful inside, that same world suddenly feels easier to breathe in. In other words, you are not only living inside circumstances, you are living inside the frequency you carry, and from there you feel, interpret, and respond to life. From ancient teachings to modern observations, human beings have always tried to name this law in different languages. Some call it vibration, some call it energy, some call it life force, some call it the field of consciousness. Whatever the name, they all meet at one truth. Life is not a dead mass, life is a current. And every person, whether they realize it or not, is sending out a particular kind of vibration into that current. Imagine the universe as a vast symphony. Everything is sound, but not every sound can be heard by the ear. Some frequencies are too low, some are too high. They fall outside normal perception, yet that does not make them unreal. It is the same with the pain people never speak out loud, yet which still quietly shapes an entire life. It is the same with beliefs no one can see, yet which secretly determine how a person loves, lets go, endures, or keeps walking. And within that symphony, you are not a passive audience member. You are a living instrument. Every thought is a note. Every emotion is a wave of resonance. Every action is a strike upon reality. You cannot stop emitting vibration. Even in silence, you are still radiating something. The question is not whether you are vibrating. The question is whether you are vibrating in fear, resentment, and lack, or in peace, gratitude, clarity, and love. Many people hear the terms high frequency and low frequency and quickly assume that low is bad and high is good. But inner life is not that simple. There are times when sadness is necessary. There are times when pain helps you see what you have ignored for too long. There are days when weakness is not failure. It is simply a sign that the soul needs rest, tenderness, and healing. A low frequency is not dangerous just because it appears. What is dangerous is staying there so long that you start believing it is your true nature. You get so used to exhaustion that you think life is supposed to feel this way. You get so used to blaming yourself that gentleness begins to feel like a luxury. You get so used to doubting every good thing that you no longer have enough trust left to receive love. At that point, life has not necessarily become harsher. It is your inner world that has been trapped in a room without light for too long. A person living at a low frequency does not always look dramatic on the outside. They may still go to work on time, fulfill their responsibilities, and speak normally. But inside, their energy is always running low. They wake up without feeling any real anticipation. Good things happen, yet they cannot fully feel joy. They interact with others, but never truly connect. Life keeps moving, but the soul feels as if it is standing on the sidelines, exhausted, watching it all pass by. When a person lives too long in anxiety, judgment, and bitterness, their frequency grows heavier. Repeated thoughts become like invisible hands pulling them downward, not because they are weak, but because the human mind tends to believe what it hears over and over again. If every day you tell yourself that you are not enough, that the world is unsafe, that no one is genuine, that nothing really matters, then over time, those thoughts stop being passing thoughts. They become your baseline vibration. And then you are not just thinking negatively. You begin to see everything through a stained lens. You notice rejection more easily than acceptance. You remember what wounded you more than what healed you. You feel lack more than what is present. You attract draining relationships more easily than nourishing ones, not because the universe is punishing you, but because things of similar resonance tend to find each other. A heart full of fear struggles to recognize peace, even when peace is standing at the door. You have probably experienced this before. The same feedback can feel like an opportunity for growth when your heart is steady. but like proof of worthlessness when you are wounded. The same silence from another person can feel understandable when you are grounded, but feel like abandonment when you are insecure. The world remains what it is. It is the inner frequency that turns every signal into a different story. That is why raising your frequency is not about performing positivity. It is not about pretending to be fine while your heart is breaking. It is not about smiling to hide the sleepless nights. Real elevation begins with honesty, with daring to look into your darkness without making it your identity, with admitting, I am exhausted, I am hurting, I am afraid. But this is not the whole of me. This is only a cloud passing across the sky of my inner life, not the sky itself. There is something quiet, yet unbelievably powerful. A person's life is shaped not only by major decisions, but by the quality of the thoughts they repeat in silence. One thought may pass, but a thought repeated every day becomes the climate of the soul. And that climate over time determines what is able to bloom and what withers inside you. If your heart keeps repeating that you are unworthy, you will struggle to hold on to good things, even when they come. If you keep telling yourself that life is nothing but loss, you will miss countless gentle moments already present around you. If you are always preparing for betrayal, you will bring a guarded energy into even the most sincere relationships. Gradually, you will not only defend yourself from pain, you will also close the door to healing. Thoughts are not meaningless smoke. They move through the body. They affect your breathing, your eyes, the way you walk, the way you speak. A person who lives in fear often carries tension in the body. A person living in gratitude often has a softer face, a deeper breath, a warmer gaze. The inner world is not as invisible as we think. It always finds a way to express itself outwardly, and life, in its own way, tends to respond to the signals you carry every single day. Some people enter new opportunities from a state of lack. They believe they are not enough, so they never fully show up. Some enter love with a heart full of suspicion, and even while being loved, they live as though abandonment is already on the way. Some move through an ordinary day, but because their minds are crowded with resentment, by evening they feel only how exhausting the world is. Circumstances do not always determine experience. Often it is the frequency of thought that determines how circumstances are experienced. What is strange is that the mind does not always clearly distinguish between what is truly happening and what has been imagined over and over again. A fear that has not happened can still make your heart race if you rehearse it long enough. An old, painful memory, replayed daily, can make the present feel as heavy as yesterday. So every thought is not just an idea, it is a wave. It moves through the nervous system, through emotion, and into the way you interact with life itself. But this is also good news, because if thought can pull you down, thought can also lift you up. Not by lying to yourself, but by choosing words that are truer, brighter, and wider. Instead of always asking why life is unfair to you, you can begin asking what this experience is teaching you to become. Instead of repeating that it is too late, you can begin to see that you are still alive, still breathing, still capable of taking a different step. This shift does not come from a magical phrase. It comes from very small, steady changes. Every time you stop a cruel thought directed at yourself, every time you refuse to feed anger with a hurtful word, every time you choose understanding instead of conclusion, every time you return to the breath instead of chasing the storm in your mind. These moments may seem small, but they are slowly rewriting the vibration of your life. Thought is the seed. Emotion is the water that makes the seed grow. Some thoughts pass lightly and disappear, but when a thought is fed by emotion, it becomes much stronger. Emotion makes your inner energy denser. It turns a small idea into a field, powerful enough to shape your presence, your behavior, your choices, and even what you draw into your life. You can see this clearly on days when you feel truly joyful. The same road looks more beautiful. The same person feels more sincere. The same work feels easier to continue. But when your heart is heavy, everything seems covered in a grey veil. The air feels heavier. Sound feels harsher. The eyes of others feel easier to be wounded by. Emotion does not change the entire world, but it changes the doorway through which you enter it. Love, gratitude, peace, and compassion are expansive emotional states. When people live inside those states, they become wider, softer, brighter. They are not only easier for others to be around, they are also easier for themselves to live with. As a result, they think more clearly, react more slowly, and choose more wisely. Fear, jealousy, resentment, and bitterness do the opposite. They contract the soul, narrow perception, and make the ego fragile and reactive. When you live in low emotion for too long, you become easily triggered. An offhand comment hurts you. A small delay makes you angry. A strange glance can feel like disrespect. Not because you are weak, but because your field is too tense and too sensitive to threat. A tired soul sees burden everywhere. A wounded heart hears rejection everywhere. By contrast, when you are truly peaceful, you no longer need to control so much. You can stay near a tense person without being swallowed by their tension. You can move through an imperfect day and still keep softness in your heart. You are no longer pulled back and forth by every small change. And something beautiful happens. When a person becomes deeply peaceful, they do not need to try to shine. Their steadiness becomes its own light. Others come near them and naturally want to slow down, breathe deeper, and become gentler with themselves. That is why your emotional frequency is never only your private business. It enters the home you live in. It enters the meal you share with your family. It enters the way you answer your children, the way you treat your partner, the way you respond to co-workers, the way you listen to someone in pain. A heavy soul can make an entire space feel heavy. A warm heart can soften an entire room. You are not living only for yourself. You are shaping the world around you through the emotional field you carry. So living at a high frequency does not mean always being happy. It means learning to cleanse your emotions before they become wounds for someone else. It means allowing sadness without letting it harden into bitterness. It means moving through anger without using it to destroy something precious. It means listening to the fear inside you the way you would listen to a frightened child, instead of hating it. When emotion is held in awareness, it loses its power to rule your life from the shadows. Many people confuse high frequency with excitement. They think living with high energy means always being upbeat, always motivated, always saying beautiful things, always full of inspiration. But excitement is not always high. Some joys are loud on the surface and hollow underneath. Some laughter is huge, but when night comes, a person still does not know how to hold their own heart. High is not measured by volume. High is measured by clarity. A person with a high frequency may not speak much. They may be very quiet. But their quiet is not heavy. It feels safe. They do not need to prove how much they know. They do not need to win every conversation. They do not need everyone to think the way they think. They do not use control as a way to feel valuable, because inside themselves they already have a stable ground. And that stable ground is one of the clearest signs of a mature vibration. A high frequency means you are no longer wasting enormous energy resisting everything. You are not resisting your own feelings. You are not resisting the past. You are not resisting the truth that some things cannot be forced. You learn to cooperate with reality instead of blindly wrestling with it. That does not make you weaker. it makes you stronger, because much of suffering does not come from events themselves. It comes from prolonged resistance to what is. An inner life that is clear does not mean a life without problems. It only means that in the middle of problems, you remain present. You do not collapse the instant the wave comes. You know when to stop, when to let go, when to be silent, when to speak. You do not let the ego react so quickly that it steals the deeper wisdom inside you. You are slow enough to tell the difference between something that needs healing and something that is merely triggering an old wound. Some people think that raising your frequency means becoming a perfect version of yourself, but it does not. It means returning closer to the healthy essence that has always been there. It means becoming less performative, less self-betraying, less driven by fear of what others think. It means living closer to your deeper voice. Sometimes your highest frequency is not when you stand on a radiant stage. Sometimes it is when you sit alone by a window, quiet, not running from anything, not proving anything, simply there, fully with yourself. That clarity has tremendous power. It helps you see others with less judgment. It helps you see life with less bitterness. It helps you see yourself with less cruelty. It does not make you naive. It makes you wise. And that wisdom does not come from knowing everything. It comes from having suffered enough to understand that the things that matter most are often quiet. One deep breath, one calm mind, one compassionate gaze, one choice not to react from an old habit. That is real power. Many people do not realize they are living at a low frequency, not because they lack intelligence, but because they have grown so used to that way of living. Some exhaustion has become normal. Some ways of hurting themselves have become habit. And when pain lasts long enough, people begin to confuse it with personality. They say, I am just an anxious person. I am just too sensitive. I am just someone who overthinks. But perhaps that is not your essence. Perhaps that is simply the frequency you have been trapped in for too long. One of the clearest signs is that you always feel lack. No matter what comes, your heart does not settle. More money arrives, and you still fear losing it. Love arrives, and you still fear being left. Opportunity arrives, and you still feel unprepared. A mindset of lack is an incredibly heavy field. It makes it hard to truly receive goodness because inside you are always bracing for loss. You grip everything too tightly, not realizing that the grip itself is exhausting your energy. Another sign is that you react too quickly. Everything touches the wound. A soft comment feels offensive. A brief silence feels like abandonment. A different opinion feels threatening. When the inner world lives at a low frequency, it often stays in defensive mode. And when people live defensively for too long, they stop hearing others with openness. They hear only through the fear of being hurt. Another sign is that simple joy becomes hard to feel. A sunny morning, an ordinary meal, a sincere check-in from someone who cares, a quiet, peaceful moment. All of it passes by without truly touching your heart. Not because life has no beauty, but because your frequency has become too heavy to feel what is light. The soul is like water. When it is too muddy, it cannot reflect the sky. When it is too restless, it cannot hold the purity of light. Another sign is the way you speak to yourself. You criticize yourself before anyone else can. You predict failure before you begin. You assume people are insincere. You repeat that life is too hard, people are too cruel, and you are too broken. These words are not harmless. They are like tiny needles piercing your energy field every day. One day seems like nothing, but over months and years you begin to understand why your heart grows heavier, even though no major disaster appears to have happened. The most painful thing is that when you live at a low frequency for too long, you begin attracting what matches it. Heavy conversations, draining relationships, choices made from fear, environments that deplete you. Then you look at all of it and conclude that life is simply this way. But perhaps life is not only that way. Perhaps your current frequency is leading you into doors that are not made for peace. And the good news is that this can change if you are patient enough to return to yourself. The lifting of the inner world is rarely loud. It does not arrive like an explosion. It arrives like dawn, very slowly, very gently. And then one day you suddenly realize that you are no longer the person from your old days. What once stole your sleep no longer has the power to take all your peace. The person who once wounded you no longer gets to determine your feelings. The fear that once covered your mind still appears, but it no longer drives your whole life. One beautiful sign is that you begin reacting less, while understanding more deeply. Not because you have become cold, but because you no longer want to hand your energy over to every little trigger. You know that some things are not worth fighting over. Some people are not worth endless explanations. Some stories only grow more exhausting the more you talk about them. Your silence is no longer suppression. It is discernment. It is maturity. It is the understanding that peace matters more than winning an argument that heals nothing. Another sign is that you begin feeling grateful for very small things. A restful night of sleep, a nourishing meal, a kind conversation, a day without major upheaval, a cool breeze, the light of late afternoon. As your frequency rises, you no longer need dramatic intensity in order to feel alive. You relearn how to thank ordinary life. And that is when beauty begins opening all around you, in places you once walked past without seeing. You also begin becoming more selective in relationships, not out of arrogance, but because you understand that energy can either nourish or erode you very quickly. You stop forcing yourself to stay in places that leave your heart tired. You stop bending to please people who only know how to look at you through the lens of their own benefit. You stop confusing attention with true care. A high frequency does not make you reject people. It simply helps you recognize who can walk beside the healthiest part of you. Another deep shift is that you become more honest with yourself. You stop performing wellness. If you are tired, you admit you are tired. If you are hurting, you admit you are hurting. You stop forcing yourself to be positive all the time. You stop feeling ashamed of weak days. That honesty actually makes you stronger, because you stop wasting energy hiding your wounds. Instead, you use that energy to truly heal. And real healing always begins with the courage to look directly at what is there. As your frequency rises, forgiveness also comes more easily. Not because you forget what happened, but because you no longer want to drag the corpse of an old wound through the rest of your life. You understand that forgiveness does not always mean going back. Sometimes it simply means refusing to let the past keep feeding on your present energy. It means refusing to use old pain as the sentence for days that have not even arrived yet. It means setting your own heart free so it is still light enough to vibrate with better things. Have you noticed that there are people who do not have to say much, yet just being near them makes you breathe more easily? The air around them softens. Their eyes do not push. Their way of listening does not feel judgmental. Their presence makes you feel less defensive. That is not random. Some people have gone through enough storms that their energy is no longer sharp. They are soft because they understand pain. They are quiet because they stopped racing with the ego. They are warm because they learned how to sit peacefully with themselves. A person with a stable field creates a powerful sense of safety. Not the kind of safety that comes from money, power, or promises. The safety of consistency. You do not have to guess who they are today. They are not gentle only when they need something, then cold when the moment passes. They do not use their emotional instability to control others. Around them, you do not have to tense up in order to survive. You are allowed to be yourself without needing permission to exist. The opposite is also true. Some people make you tired the moment they walk in. They may be gifted, attractive, magnetic, even brilliant, but their field is too chaotic. Around them, you feel your heart contract. You become cautious, guarded, braced for the next sudden shift in mood. That is how you know energy is not some vague fantasy. Even when you cannot see it, you still feel it through your nervous system, through intuition, through the way your body expands or contracts around someone. That is why living at a high frequency is not only a gift you give yourself, it is a gift you give anyone who crosses your path. A mother with an inner steadiness raises a child with a different energy than a mother living in unprocessed tension. A friend with a clean field makes you want to live more kindly. A partner with a peaceful heart makes the relationship feel like shelter instead of a battleground. A leader with inner clarity makes an entire group less afraid and less exhausted. Maybe you do not need to become the most eloquent person, not the most successful, not the most perfect. Maybe the most valuable thing you can offer the world is a clean presence. An inner life that is not full of toxins, a heart healed enough not to pass pain forward, a way of living that is not loud, but steady. In an age where everyone is tired, a person who has real peace becomes a priceless form of healing for the community around them. No one can sustain a bright vibration for long while living against the needs of their own body and soul. You cannot expect inner clarity if your body is always sleep-deprived. You cannot expect peace if every day you fill your mind with too much noise, too much comparison, too much unresolved tension. Many people speak of energy as if it were purely spiritual, while forgetting that the body is the first temple of all vibration. When you are tired, everything becomes heavier. When the body is overloaded, the mind struggles to tell the difference between real danger and temporary stress. A person who is not sleeping enough, eating erratically, and never pausing to breathe will find it hard to stay in a high frequency, no matter how many inspiring quotes they read. A tired body pulls the soul downward. An unstable nervous system makes the heart more reactive, more fearful, more contracted. And then people think they are weak in spirit, when in reality they are simply being worn down by an unnourishing way of living. Raising your frequency does not begin with dramatic changes. It begins with stopping the mistreatment of your own body. Sleep a little earlier. Eat things that leave your body feeling lighter. Drink enough water. Walk in natural light. Look at screens less before bed. Relax your shoulders. Breathe deeply. Let your nervous system know that you are safe. These things sound simple, but it is the simple things, repeated consistently, that create a stable field. No one builds peace out of temporary enthusiasm. Some people keep searching for high energy somewhere far away. They want grand words, mystical knowledge, miraculous methods, but sometimes what the heart needs most is rest. What the nervous system needs most is to stop being forced into constant alert. What the body needs most is to be allowed to live like a natural living being, not a machine that must always stay productive. A soul cannot sing clearly when its instrument is cracked from overuse. You will notice this once you begin caring for your body with respect. After some time of slowing down, sleeping deeper, eating cleaner, breathing better, you will realize you are no longer as easily triggered as before. Things that once made you erupt in anger no longer carry the same weight. Nights that used to be crowded with thoughts begin to quiet. That is not magic. It is your frequency being repaired at the root. And the root of much inner chaos often begins with a body that has become too exhausted to hold one more storm. In a world full of noise, meditation is like returning a piece of sky to your soul. Not everyone who meditates needs to become mystical. Sitting still does not instantly make you enlightened. At its most human level, meditation is simply learning how to stay with yourself without running away. It is sitting long enough to notice how loud the mind is, how tired the heart is, and how long you have been forgetting your own breath. In the beginning, sitting still can feel difficult. You will notice one thought after another. Old stories, new worries, regrets, anger at someone else, anger at yourself. But this is not failure. It is the first time you are truly hearing the noise that was already inside you, noise that used to be covered by busyness. Meditation does not create chaos. It reveals the chaos that was already there, and only when you can see it clearly can you begin to calm it. The breath is a remarkable bridge. Each time you return to it, it is as if you are placing an anchor back into the sea of your inner life. You do not need to force anything. Just breathe in and know you are breathing in. Breathe out and know you are breathing out. Slow down a little. Soften a little. Be here in this moment, not racing too far into the past and not hurling yourself too aggressively into the future. That simple presence is a very high frequency. It takes you out of unconscious turbulence. Some people meditate for a while and do not necessarily become more impressive, but they become gentler. Life does not become easier, but they panic less in the face of difficulty. Their wounds do not vanish, but those wounds stop swallowing them whole. That is the true value of meditation. It does not turn you into someone else. It helps you become less unfamiliar to yourself. And when you are no longer unfamiliar to yourself, you stop desperately searching outside for the peace that must be built within. Meditation is also a deep way of cleansing frequency, because most of the heavy energy inside us does not come from one single event. It comes from countless unprocessed reactions. Meditation helps those waves settle. It allows emotions to be seen instead of suppressed. It lets the body release tensions you did not even know you were holding. Every deep breath, every minute of sitting still, every moment of not fighting the present is one more step in bringing your frequency out of chaos and back toward light. There is a very small doorway that opens into a very large space. That doorway is gratitude. Not surface-level politeness, but the real ability to see what is already present in your life instead of being obsessed with what is missing. When a person stops looking only at the empty space, they begin to notice the ground beneath their feet. And once they feel that ground, they no longer fall so easily into the feeling of instability. Gratitude does not remove pain overnight, but it softens bitterness. It does not erase hardship, but it prevents hardship from swallowing your entire awareness. In the middle of an imperfect day, gratitude lets you notice that something is still holding you up. A healthy breath, someone who is still here, a home, a meal, a lesson, another chance to begin again. These things may seem small, but they keep the soul from falling completely into despair. A mindset of lack always lowers frequency. The more you stare at what has not come, the poorer you feel, even if your hands already hold so much. The more you compare, the less full your life feels. The more you chase standards created outside of you, the further you drift from your own true rhythm. Gratitude is a turning point in awareness. It reminds you that life is not only made of what has not arrived, it is also made of what is already carrying you, even if you once took it for granted. Some people only understand the value of a healthy body once they lose it. Only understand the meaning of someone's daily presence once that person is gone. Only understand the worth of a peaceful night's sleep after passing through exhaustion. If you wait until lost to learn gratitude, the price can be immense. Sometimes raising your frequency simply means learning to truly see what is here before life forces you to see it through pain. You do not need to fake gratitude for things that are not real. You only need to be honest about a few things that are. Each day, if you pause and quietly name 3 things you are still being given, your frequency will begin to change. Gratitude is an open state. It widens the heart. It softens urgency. It helps you cooperate with life. And once you open like that, the energy around you starts shifting too. You notice more beauty. You behave more gently. You attract healthier connections. It all begins with a heart that no longer knows only how to stare at what is missing. The spaces where you live, work, and spend your time are also affecting your field, whether you realize it or not. A room left cluttered for too long can weigh down the mind. A place full of noise, stress, judgment, and toxic competition keeps your nervous system on guard. By contrast, a clean, bright space, a space with air, with stillness, with kindness, can lift you tremendously without saying a word. Human beings do not live apart from environment. We absorb the atmosphere of the places we inhabit, not only physically but spiritually. A child raised in a home full of shouting carries a different frequency than a child raised in a home with listening. A person who works too long in an environment where pressure is normalized can gradually lose all inner sense of safety. A person who spends their time around those who gossip, complain, and criticize will struggle to keep a bright heart without strong inner awareness. Pay attention to how you feel after being somewhere, lighter or heavier, more open or more contracted, more inspired to live beautifully or more prone to react. That is the way a space is speaking to your energy. There are cafes you enter and immediately want to stay a little longer. There are homes you step into and feel your heart settle. There are also places where just a short stay leaves your whole being agitated. Your intuition always knows. The question is whether you have slowed down enough to listen. So raising your frequency also means learning to clear your environment. Let go of the things that keep old heavy energy trapped. Create a small space to breathe, to read, to sit still. Let light in, let air in, let order reduce the countless unconscious stimulations in your mind, and even more importantly, clear your relationship environment. Not by cutting everyone off in a harsh way, but by loving yourself enough to reduce your presence in places that only make your soul feel more covered in dust. Some words pass through and disappear, but some remain in the heart for years. A word of encouragement at the right moment can save someone from the edge. A repeated insult can take years for a person to recover from. Words are not as light as they seem. They are energy turned into sound. And every time you speak, you send a frequency into the world, into other people, and into yourself. Pay attention to how you speak to yourself. That is where frequency is often decided most deeply. If you constantly use cruel language toward yourself, not enough, useless, broken, failure, then no matter how much praise comes from outside, your inner field will still be clouded. Some people are wounded not because the world is too harsh, but because the voice inside them is harsher than anyone else. And until that voice is healed, it is very hard to live in a bright vibration. By contrast, kind speech does not mean endless self-indulgence. It means placing truth inside compassion. Instead of saying, "I am terrible," you can say, "I am tired, and I need to learn again." Instead of saying, "I will never be able to do this," you can say, "I cannot do it yet, but I can keep going." Even a shift in wording changes the inner energy, because the mind is always listening to what you repeat, and eventually it will believe those words as truth. The same is true in how we speak to others. A person living at a high frequency does not always say only pleasant things, but they know how to speak without humiliating. They know how to offer correction without crushing someone's dignity. They know how to set boundaries without turning language into a blade. They understand that words do not merely convey information. Words shape the atmosphere of a relationship. Some families fall apart not because of one major disaster, but because of years of words that slowly turned the heart cold. So if you want to raise your frequency, begin with your mouth and with the quiet voice inside your own head. Say less that drains. Say more that heals. Not in a fake way, just in a sincere and luminous one. A gentle sentence can change the atmosphere of an entire day. A tender reminder to yourself can keep you from falling into an old pit again. And often, what a tired soul needs is not a grand piece of advice, just one sentence soft enough that they do not have to keep fighting themselves. Resentment is a very heavy kind of energy. It makes you feel justified, but drains your life force one drop at a time. When you live in resentment, you hand your power over to the past, to circumstances, to other people, to the things you cannot control. You live as though your happiness can only begin when someone changes, when life repays you, when justice finally arrives. And while you wait, the years pass, while your inner life remains trapped inside an airless room called regret. Everyone has had reasons to hurt. Some injustices are real. Some betrayals are real. Some losses are too deep to dismiss with a simple instruction to let go. But holding on to resentment does not honor the wound more. It only keeps the wound alive on your present energy. You think you are protecting the justice of your old pain. But in truth, you are feeding it every day with your own life force. And that is too high a price for something that has already happened. A person begins raising their frequency when they understand that acceptance is not agreement. Forgiveness is not approving what hurt you. Letting go is not forgetting. Letting go is simply refusing to let the past keep ruling the present like a tyrant. It is the decision that what happened may already have taken much from you, but it will not take the rest of your life as well. This is the reclaiming of power, not surrender. When you stop resenting, your energy comes back to you. You no longer spend endless strength retelling the same old story. You no longer need others to confirm how much you suffered. You no longer build an identity around being the victim. You begin asking different questions, not who made me this way, but who do I want to become from here? Not why did this happen, but what in me needs healing so I do not repeat the same cycle. It is a beautiful moment because when resentment stops, your heart begins making room for new things, room for peace, room for maturity, room for people who do not come to wound you further. And maybe, for the first time in a very long time, you stop using the past to define your entire being. You carry it as a lesson, not as a chain. There is a kind of silence that suffocates people, silence born of fear, oppression, or the inability to live truthfully. But there is also a bright kind of silence, a silence that refuses to feed more chaos, silence that listens, silence that prevents you from speaking words you will regret, silence that lets you hear the deeper voice within yourself. This kind of silence is not weak. It is a form of strength belonging to someone no longer swept away by every passing wave. In a world where everyone is rushing to respond, the person who knows how to pause before reacting is often the one holding a higher frequency. So much of what makes life heavier does not come from the event itself, but from the impulsive reaction right after it. A text sent in anger. A sentence spoken when pride is wounded, a decision made while the heart is still confused. Then we carry the consequences for days, months, even years, simply because we were not slow enough to let the wave pass before we acted. Silence, when used well, does not make you passive. It makes you more precise. Precise in feeling, precise in speech, precise in choice. When you stop speaking merely to unload, when you stop reacting merely to discharge, your energy stops leaking so easily. And then you begin to notice something surprising. Peace grows very quickly when we stop creating unnecessary damage through our own mouth and through an ego that has not yet been fully examined. There are arguments that might never have become wounds if both people had paused for just a moment. There are relationships that might not have broken so painfully if there had been one more breath before speaking. There are nights when, had you not believed every thought racing through your mind, you might not have pushed yourself into despair. Silence creates the space where wisdom can appear, and wisdom always vibrates higher than instinctive reaction. When people hear the phrase love, they often think first of softness, endurance, sacrifice, and emotional surrender. But true love is not losing yourself to keep someone else. It is not emptying yourself completely and calling that noble. It is not staying everywhere just because you fear making someone sad. Love at a high frequency always walks with wisdom. It does not feed dependence. It does not cooperate with harm. It does not deny reality just to preserve a beautiful image. Love begins first in the way you treat yourself. If you cannot hold your own pain with gentleness, you will easily turn love into control, pleading, dependence, or fear of loss. A heart that does not feel loved by itself often goes searching for love like a rescue mission. But what seeks from desperation is often not love. It is hunger. And hunger makes your frequency unstable inside relationships. By contrast, someone who truly knows how to love carries a different kind of warmth. They do not require others to be perfect before responding with compassion. They do not use their wounds as permission to wound others back. They know how to say no when necessary. They know when leaving is wiser than staying and drowning together. They know how to support without controlling. They know how to care without erasing boundaries. That is love with a spine. And because it has a spine, it does not break so easily in hardship. Love is also the strongest healing frequency because it dissolves separation. So much human suffering comes from feeling exiled from life, cut off from meaning, rejected from belonging, estranged from oneself. Love returns us to connection. Connection with the body. Connection with the present. Connection with another person's pain. Connection with the truest part of ourselves. And in that connection, the frozen layers of defense begin to melt. When you live through love, the atmosphere around you changes. You do not need to perform holiness. Just hurt less. Judge less. Stop calling hardness maturity. Sometimes the highest thing is not saying something correct. It is saying something correct in a way that still protects the heart of the one listening. Sometimes the strongest thing is not victory. It is refusing to pass forward the pain that once passed through you. That is love at a very high level, quiet yet deeply powerful. Some people carry a wound so long that they forget what lightness even feels like. They speak of old pain calmly, but their body still tightens each time they mention it. They say they have moved on, but one small reminder from the present can make their whole nervous system shake as though they never left that past. That is when you know the event may be over, but its energy is still trapped in the body. And as long as that energy remains unfreed, your frequency will struggle to rise. Forgiveness is often misunderstood as an act of nobility offered to the person who hurt you. But more deeply, forgiveness is the act of stopping their pain from living rent-free inside your mind and emotions. It is the act of reclaiming the energy that was frozen on the day of the wound. Forgiveness does not always come with reconciliation. It does not require a reunion. It does not require starting over. Sometimes it simply means accepting that it happened, that it hurt, that it changed you, but that you no longer wish to offer the rest of your life to it. This process is not easy. Some wounds are so deep that even the thought of forgiveness feels unfair. But remember this: Forgiveness does not erase history. It only removes history's right to dominate the present. It does not say what happened was right. It says my heart deserves peace more than it deserves to keep carrying this pain. It is a quiet kind of maturity. You stop using the wound as your identity. You stop building your home in the past. You stop retelling the story simply to keep the fire of anger alive, because you finally realize that fire is burning you more than anyone else. When forgiveness truly begins, your body changes. The breath deepens, the jaw loosens, the chest softens. Old memories remain, but they no longer carry the same electric charge. You can look back without falling apart. You can remember without being pulled back into the person you were then. That is when energy returns to you. And when energy returns, your frequency begins to brighten naturally. No force required. Because what weighed you down most no longer holds the same power over you. One of the most subtle spiritual pressures is when people turn healing into a new competition. They want to be peaceful all the time, bright all the time, positive all the time, high vibrational all the time. And when one tired day comes, one flash of anger, one heavy sadness, they feel like they have failed. But that is not the right path. You are not a machine programmed to remain at one perfect frequency. You are human. You rise and fall. You clear and cloud. Sometimes you are strong. Sometimes you need support. The issue is not whether you fall. The issue is how long it takes you to return. Some people stay in one burst of anger for 3 days. Some stay in it for 3 years. Some let one careless sentence ruin an entire week. Others need only one quiet sitting, one deep sleep, one walk, one honest moment with themselves, and they begin returning to a brighter place. Maturity is not never becoming misaligned. Maturity is having a map back to yourself when you do. You do not need to fear low days. Just do not build your home there. Treat them like weather clouds. They come to signal something, to remind you that you are tired, that you need rest, that you have been triggered, that you are holding something unseen inside your heart. If you learn to listen to the message instead of fighting the state, returning becomes far gentler. Because most secondary suffering does not come from the feeling itself. It comes from resisting the feeling. Some days, raising your frequency is simply not adding more self-attack, not forcing yourself to be okay immediately, not falling into comparison with the better version of yesterday. Just breathe, eat one decent meal, turn down the noise, go to sleep early, write down what feels heavy, reach out to someone who makes you feel safe. Then wait. Often healing does not come from dramatic action. It comes from not harming yourself more when you are already weak. Not everyone will be able to walk with you into a new frequency. That is both sad and beautiful. Sad because some people were once close and now your rhythms no longer match. Beautiful because it means you are truly changing. When you begin loving peace more than drama, sincerity more than emotional games, depth more than glitter, relationships once built on lack, control, and unhealed pain begin to lose their fit. Some people may say you have changed. Yes, you have. But change is not always betrayal. Sometimes change is how you save your soul from old cycles. You are no longer interested in conversations fueled only by judgment. You no longer want to prove your worth by tolerating what leaves you drained. You stop calling neglect normal. You stop confusing love mixed with anxiety for romance. That is not arrogance. That is consciousness growing. When your frequency changes, there may be a season of loneliness. The old no longer fits, and the new has not fully arrived. This is a fragile stage. It can tempt people back into old familiar patterns simply because they fear emptiness. But if you stay patient, you will realize that this emptiness is not punishment. It is a transition. It is a cleared room waiting for more aligned connections to enter. And usually the right connections do not arrive in a rush. They arrive quietly, but they last. You will also notice that the people who truly belong in your life are not threatened when you become brighter. They do not feel uncomfortable when your boundaries become clearer. They do not need you to stay small so they can feel safe. They feel joy when you become more healed, more grounded, more genuine. They do not try to pull you back into older versions of yourself simply because those versions were easier to control. That is one of the clearest ways to tell the difference between a nourishing relationship and a draining one. One helps you unfold. The other needs you to remain contracted. No one lives alone in the world of energy. Every thought, every word, every emotion ripples outward. You may not see it immediately, but like a stone dropped into a lake, the wave travels far beyond the point of impact. A mother who softens changes the climate of an entire home. A father who learns to listen can reduce wounds that would otherwise pass through generations. A teacher with a bright heart can save a child from growing up believing they have no worth. A leader who knows how to breathe, listen, and stay grounded can transform the atmosphere of a whole group. That is why your healing is never only personal. A less chaotic heart is a real contribution to the world. A safer nervous system sends out less violence. An ego that has been examined needs less to push others down in order to feel tall. A person who stops passing pain forward has done something enormous. Because so much suffering in this world is not newly created. It is transmitted from one person to another, from one generation to the next, through words, behavior, silence, neglect, and wounds that were never named. When you live at a high frequency, you become an invisible point of support. You do not need a speech. You do not need to persuade anyone. Your very presence creates impact. Someone sees you stay calm in the middle of turmoil, and they learn not to panic so quickly. Someone sees you remain kind even after being hurt, and they begin to believe they do not have to become bitter in order to survive. Someone feels your sincerity, and they no longer want to live behind their old mask. You may never know all the people you touched, but energy works that way. It travels farther than the eye can measure. And for that reason, the highest responsibility of a human being is not to shine in order to impress. It is to cleanse the inner world enough that what you radiate does not become a burden to others. Real light is not blinding. It is warm. It helps people see without hurting their eyes. It does not need performance. It only needs presence. And perhaps, in this age of too much noise, what the world needs is not more dazzling people. It needs more people clear enough that wherever they walk, the human heart becomes a little less cold. There is a very common temptation when people talk about energy. They use it as a tool to get everything they want: money, love, success, opportunity, other people behaving according to their wishes. But if it ends there, frequency becomes just another form of control, only more subtle. Because the deepest purpose of raising your frequency is not to pull the whole world in your direction. It is to stop being dragged away from yourself so easily by the world. Life may still contain loss. People may still come and go. Plans may still fail. There may still be days when you did your best and the result was not what you wanted. A high frequency does not promise a life without wind. It gives you an inner spine so that even when the winds shift, you do not lose the deepest qualities of your soul. You still know how to love without begging, how to grieve without collapsing into despair, how to leave without carrying too much poison in your heart. When you stop using energy as a negotiation with life, a strange freedom begins. You no longer live well just to be rewarded. You no longer meditate just so things will go your way. You no longer practice gratitude just to receive more. You live brightly because brightness is the healthier way to exist. You love because you do not want to become a place where pain keeps reproducing itself. You keep your heart clear because that is the only way not to betray your own soul. This is a very deep maturity where inner value matters more than outer results. At that point, even success changes flavor. It is no longer the ego's victory. It becomes the natural result of an inner world that is focused enough, clean enough, and steady enough to walk the long road. Relationships change too. You no longer cling in order to prove you are lovable. You connect from fullness, not from emotional hunger. And no matter what comes or goes, you know you can still return to yourself. That is real wealth. Not wealth because you possess a lot, but wealth because you do not lose yourself so easily when something leaves your hand. In the end, living at a high frequency does not mean becoming some strange floating being or escaping all the pain of human life. It is a very human journey, very real, very close. It is the journey of learning how to make your heart clearer in a dusty world, learning how to breathe more deeply in turbulent days, learning not to let the darkness of the past determine the whole way you love, live, and see tomorrow. You do not need to change everything overnight. You do not need to become the most radiant version of yourself immediately. Today, just slow down a little. Speak to yourself a little more gently. Offer one less complaint. Take one deeper breath. Look again at what is already here with gratitude. Step away from what drains you. Stay near what makes your heart kinder. Little by little, your frequency will change. Not loudly, not performatively, but truly. And one day, you will realize you are no longer living by old instinct. What used to drag you down no longer has the same power. You do not need to force yourself to shine. You only need to live truthfully, gently, and consciously, and light will come. And when that light becomes real enough, it will not only guide you, it will quietly touch the people who pass through your life, reminding them that even in the middle of so much chaos, a different way of living is still possible. Life, in the end, may not be fully in your control, but the frequency you choose to live from each day is something you can learn to protect. You may not control every event, but you can choose not to let any event steal the most beautiful qualities of your soul. You may not be able to change the whole world, but you can make the part of the world that passes through your heart softer, brighter, and more worth living in. And perhaps that is real vibrational power, not making the universe serve you, but making your heart clear enough to move in harmony with the greater rhythm of life, not becoming above others, but returning to what it means to be fully human. A human being who knows how to breathe, how to love, how to listen, how to let go, how to stay steady in the middle of change while still remaining warm. A human being carrying the frequency of peace, walking through life like a quiet song but a deep one. If today you are tired, remember this. You do not need to leap into the light all at once. Just do not abandon yourself. Do not believe that your current darkness is the whole truth of who you are. Just keep taking small steps toward clarity, because every kind thought, every emotion held in the right way, every time you choose love over harm, understanding over reaction, return over escape, is changing the frequency of your life. And when that frequency changes, not only do you change, the way you see the world changes, the way the world touches you changes. From there, a different life begins. Not because of outer magic, but because the symphony inside you has finally found its true melody.